Okay guys, today I've got a pretty fun video for you. We're going to be making a faction system where you might be allies with a certain faction, you might be enemies with another faction, and so if you think about, there's a lot of games out there where maybe the zombies hate the pirates, and like the pirates hate the monkeys, and the monkeys are friends with the sharks, and the sharks are allies with the sea turtle. I don't know. Whatever the case is, you've probably played a game where you can be friends with someone and be enemies with another person, or, it's a nice feature to have in your game, and it's actually pretty easy to implement. So that's what we're going to be covering today, how to make your own ally system. Now, the way that mine works is, depending on whether you are friends, enemies, or neutral with any given faction, they will say different things to you. So, for example, if you are friends with the zombies will say, "Hello, friend." But if you are enemies with the zombies, they'll say, "You suck," Or if you're neutral with the zombies, they might say, "Hey." So that's how I've got mine set up. But you could certainly modify the system to make it so that instead of saying, "You suck," it could start attacking you instead. Or it could start, if you're friends, it could give you some resources or something like that. So that's basically the whole system that we're going to be building today. So I hope you guys enjoy. Anyway, so let's lay down the groundwork here. So since we're adding some AI, we need to make an AI controller. So we're going to click on Show All Classes. And then we're going to add an AI controller. I'm just going to call this, let's see, Controller AI Character. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is make the character for the AI, so we'll just right-click New C++ class, and we're going to make a character. And I'm just going with the name Character AI. And that's pretty much all we need to add in terms of classes. Just a couple of classes to cover the AI. Okay, so I'm going to start off in the Character AI class. If we go to the CPP file, I'm just going to get rid of tick and set up player input. We don't need either of those functions, so we can just remove them. So the first thing I'm going to actually lay down is a enumeration which holds all the different types of factions that will be in our game. So I'm going to make it a blueprint type. And we'll just copy this in. So here are a few different types of things that will be in my game. We have no faction, a pirate faction, a robot faction, and a hipster faction. So these are all the different factions that are in my game. But for example, say we want a zombie faction, we just put it in there. And you can add as many factions as you like. You just separate each value with a comma. And it's a good idea to add a umeta display name. So that's pretty much it. Okay, so now we have our faction type. What I'd recommend you do now is hit save and then build. Okay, so I have my enumeration done. I just built and then reopened Visual Studio just to get rid of the errors. They tend to pop up. Let's see here. So the first thing I'm going to add is a behavior tree. And because I want to be able to set this in the editor, I'm going to put edit defaults only. Now we want a faction for our AI. So what faction is our AI character? And we want to be able to set that in the editor as well, so we'll just put edit defaults only in there. Okay. I'm going to add a function for onC pawn. So our pawn is going to have a pawn sensing component. And when it sees the player, it's going to call this function called onC pawn. In fact, it's going to call this whenever it sees anything, whether it's a player or not. Next thing I'll do is add a protected section, and I'm going to add a value b is talking equals false. So this is true if the AI is currently saying something, false otherwise. Right, now I'm going to copy and paste in some stuff just to save time, but I will explain what everything does. So this is a text render component. This is the component that displays text above the AI's head. We then have an array of factions. These are the friendly factions. We have the neutral factions and the enemy factions. And all of these have edit defaults only, so that inside of the editor we can actually change the values of these. We then have 3 arrays of strings. The conversation pieces that we say to friends, neutral, and enemies. So for example, in this array we might have, "Hey friend, how are you?" Just, you know, some friendly conversation. And then for the enemy one, we might have "scum," or "you suck," or, you know, something along those lines. We have a character name, which is just the name of whatever's talking. And then finally we have some pawn sensors, which are going to basically act as the eyes for the AI and allow it to see our player. Okay, yes, one last thing we need is the ability to display conversation. So I'm just going to, again, just to save time, paste these in. So these are 2 functions. The first one is going to set the text above the AI's head, and this one's going to clear the text above the AI's head. And so we can go ahead and program these now. So if I come over to my CPP, the first thing I'm going to do is when we begin play as well, I'm going to say that when we see a pawn, we want to call the onSeePawn function that we made. And we'll just put it in there. So right now, I only want the AI to react to the player. I'm not going to make him react to any artificial intelligence, you know, any other AI right now, although that's not very hard to do, by the way. But I, in this case, just want it to work for my character. So what I'm going to do is get a reference to the character. Now, I actually need to include a bunch of different header files, so just copy and paste those in. Or, sorry, just copy what I've put. That looks to be correct there. Okay. The first thing we need to do is get a reference to the character and make sure it's actually the character that we've seen. So I'm going to say faction character player equals okay, so that gets a reference to our player, and we're just going to compare pawn and player and make sure that they are equal. So make sure that our AI actually saw the player and not something else. We're also going to get the controller. We just use the getController function and cast it into this type here that we made. So we're going to make sure the controller is valid. We're going to make sure that the character is equal to whatever we've seen. And the last thing we're going to do here, which I'll quickly explain, this is another check that I decided to add. Oh, I called that player. So what I'm doing here is getting the location of our player, and I'm getting the location of the AI, and I'm making sure that the AI is within 300 units of distance away from the player. And that's just going to ensure that the AI is within a talking distance of the player. Because obviously, if our player's 100 meters away from the AI, that's not a very realistic distance that you could talk to someone at. So I'm just making sure they're within a few meters of the player. Now I'm going to check if the player is friendly or not. To do that, we just say friendly factions contains player get faction, which I haven't added yet, but I will add that soon. So basically what this is inside of our friendly factions, get the player's faction and see if that is a friendly faction. If it is a friendly faction, then we can say something friendly to the player. To do that, I'm going to use our set conversation text function which we made. And we haven't yet put it together, but I'll show you how to do that in a second. But what we're doing here, this may look confusing, we're just getting a random friendly conversation piece out of the friendly conversation strings array. We're just getting a random conversation thing. So that might be, hey friend, or how are you buddy, or you know, something like that. So all I'm going to do is just repeat this for the neutral factions and for the enemy factions. So I'll just check if the player's an enemy or something else. And now we need to actually make this get faction function because it doesn't know what we're talking about. So if we go to faction character.h, the first thing I need to do is include character AI. And the reason I need to include character AI is because that is where the faction enumeration is located, this thing here. So we just have to include this so that we can use it. Okay, so I'll just put it here. I'm just going to say e faction type faction. So this is the player. This is the faction that the player is in. And of course we need to make this edit defaults only, so we can change that inside of the editor. And I've got a couple of little helper functions here which are just going to help us out. So get faction is just going to get the player's faction and return it. And set faction is going to let us set the player's faction. And I'm just going to make that function, so I'll just copy and paste this. And I'm just going to say that the player's faction is equal to the new type. And there we go. So that's pretty much the character setup. We will get some errors because if you include a .h file, it sometimes gives you some errors. So yeah, we'll just ignore those for now. It's not really a big deal. We'll come back into our character AI here. And let's make these two functions our conversation functions. These are very simple functions. All these do is display some text above the AI's head so that it looks like the AI is talking. Okay, so set conversation text. All that we're going to do, we're going to make sure that the player's not already talking, because if the player is already talking, then we don't want to set the text. Now we can assume that the player is talking, so we can set talking to true. Now, I'll just copy and paste this as well. This is just an if string, print if, and this is just saying we will display the character's name and then the sentence that we want the character to say. So you'll be able to see the character's name and what they're saying as well. We're also just going to set a timer. We'll just make a dummy handle. We're not going to use this handle ever again, so I'm just making it so we can put it in. We're going to get the timer manager and then use the set timer function, pass in our dummy handle we made. And we're going to say after 3 seconds, clear the conversation text. And we don't want that to loop, so we put in false. And in clear conversation text, I'm just going to say B is talking is equal to false, because we're no longer talking. And then I can just set the conversation text. I can set it back to nothing. So I think that handles everything for now. We're getting some errors here. A faction character is undefined. What have I done? That should work, shouldn't it? I guess not. What have I done? Oh, I think that's just with the include. What I'm going to do is just save and build. Okay, so I'm back from saving and building. I just closed and reopened Visual Studio, and now we're good to go. So, sorry if you guys are getting any of those weird errors. They are annoying, but it's just part of dealing with a game engine. Yeah, you do have to deal with some bugs. Anyways, we're going to make a constructor now for our controller. So, we're in our controller class, and we're just going to make a constructor here. We'll say add a possess function. This is a function that is called when our controller takes control of the AI. So you can think of the controller as kind of the brain of the AI, and the character is more of a visual representation. A good analogy is a sock puppet. So the character is the sock puppet itself, and then the controller is kind of like the hand inside of the sock puppet doing all the stuff behind the scenes. So yeah, the controller is kind of the brain. We want to create a reference to a blackboard and a behavior tree component, so I'm just going to paste that in. All that I've done here is just added references to the behavior tree and blackboard, and then I just created a couple of force inline functions that will allow us to easily get these whenever we want. So now we're ready to deal with the CPP of a controller. This is pretty much the last thing you'll need to do in this tutorial. Again, I'm just going to paste a bunch of headers in here that we need. Annoying stuff, but you do have to do it, otherwise you'll get some errors. So we're going to start by making the constructor. And we just initialize our behavior component and blackboard components. And you'll notice here I said brain component equals behavior component equals create default subobject. So you might be wondering what two equals does at the same time. It's kind of just a double initialization. So we're initializing brain component and behavior component at the same time. All AI controllers will come with this thing called a brain component. And if at any time you want to do some drastic things like stop the behavior tree and other things, it is very important that we initialize this. So you have to do that. Also, that should be faction character. So that's all we need to do in terms of initializing stuff for our controller. We're going to come into the possess function now. So we'll say controller AI character possess, and that takes one parameter, which is the pawn we are possessing. We need to call the super. Okay. So now we need to get the character that we're possessing. So to get the character we're possessing, we just... This is the character we're possessing right here. It's called pawn. It's passed in as a parameter. So all we need to do is cast the pawn into our AI pawn. Because right now we just have a pawn, this thing here, but what we really want is a character AI, which is a type of pawn. So we're just casting it into our type that we want. Right, I'm going to copy and paste this because I never end up writing this myself. Whenever I'm using AI, I always just copy and paste this. This is just some really general boilerplate code that you can kind of just forget about whenever you're making an AI thing. All we're doing is just starting the behavior tree and the blackboard. And to be honest, I always forget this code, but it's pretty basic stuff. We're basically just making sure that the blackboard asset's valid and the behavior tree is valid. And then we're just calling this function called initialize blackboard, which will start the blackboard, and then start tree, which will start the behavior tree. And that'll make sure everything runs. If you forget to do this, you will not see your behavior tree simulate or do anything at all inside of the game. Last thing we need to do. This is one of the most basic functions we will write. It's just the set player key function. So inside of our blackboard, we're going to have a key called player. And this is going to be a reference to us, the player. We're just going to say that if the player is valid, then set value as object, and we're just going to set the key called player. We're going to set that equal to the player that's been passed in. And so now what's going to happen is we can use this value inside of our behavior tree to make the AI run over to the player, which, yeah, not a big deal, but that's going to be helpful, and it's going to make things a little bit nicer. Generally, in a real game as well, you're going to need a reference to the player, because you might want your AI to shoot the player, and you're going to need to know where the player is so you can look at him, or, you know, certain things like that. So you will need a reference to the player, which is what we're doing here. Okay, so if I build this, we should be good to go back in the editor. Okay, so let's set up some AI, and we're going to tell the AI what factions to hate and what ones to like and things like that. So I'm going to make a folder called AI, and I'm going to make a zombie AI. Inside of here, I'm just going to make a behavior folder. And we're going to make a blueprint folder as well. Inside of the behavior folder, we're just going to right click, go to artificial intelligence, and make a behavior tree. We'll do bt_zombie, and then bb_zombie. And then we're going to go to C++ classes, and then right click on the character AI and create a blueprint of that class. And that can go inside of our blueprints folder here. I'll just call this BP Zombie AI. If you wanted to, you could actually go and find yourself a zombie mesh and things like that, but I'm not going to worry about that. If I go down to mesh here, we're just going to use the standard mesh for the mannequin. You will need to rotate him. And then under AI controller class, you want to specify our controller that we made. So there you go. So now what we need is the faction that the AI is part of. So since this is a zombie, we're going to tell it that it's a zombie. We're going to select the behavior tree we set up. And friendly factions, obviously it's a zombie, so it's going to be friendly to all the other zombies. It's going to, let's say it's friendly with the pirates as well. The zombies like the pirates for some reason. And let's say that the zombies hate the robots. Now we're going to add some friendly conversation strings, so we'll say, "Hi friend. Hello ally." We'll add a neutral one. Meh. Hey. And then we'll add some enemy ones. So we'll just be like, "Scum. You suck. Go to hell." I don't know. Just random stuff. And yeah, so we're good now. Should be able to compile that. One last thing that we do need is a navigation mesh. So if we go to our classes here and type in nav mesh bounds volume, you can just drag this in. And just make sure it wraps over the whole map. And if we press P, you should be able to see the nav mesh. You can press P to turn that off. One last thing I also forgot as well is we need to tell it what animation blueprint to use. If we go to mesh, you can just select third person in and BP. Okay, let's drop him into the level. Oh yes, one thing I did forget. Really quick, I just have to initialize the character's stuff. I didn't even do that. The only thing that we need to actually worry about initializing is just the sensors and the conversation text component. So you can see here we have the text render component. We initialize that. We also initialize the pawn's sensors and set its peripheral vision angle, which you can just do inside the editor if you want. We're setting the relative location so that the text is above the AI's head. We're attaching it to the root, setting the alignment of the text to be in the center, and by default all text components will say the word text, so we just need to clear that by setting text to nothing. So there we go. If we build that, we should be all good to go. Okay, so I compiled them back after doing all of the initialization of the stuff inside of the AI. So you should see now pawn sensors and conversation text if you click there. So I think we should be good to go. Let's save, close, and we'll go into our player and tell our player what faction we're in. Because we need to give ourselves a faction, obviously. If we open the full editor here, let's set our faction to be a pirate. And as you remember, the zombies like the pirates, so we should get some nice text. I gotta drag him in here. Whoops, wrong one. There we go. And I'll just set up his behavior tree really quick. So if we go to the blackboard, we'll add a new object key called player. Set the base class to actor. And now we're good. We'll just go to the behavior tree. All I'm going to do is just make a quick sequence, and I'm just going to say move to the player, but only if the player is set. And once you're at the player, just wait for like, I don't know, a few seconds. Also, I forgot to give him a name, so you can just type in zombie or, you know, let's call him Fred. Seriously, you can call this guy whatever you like. But anyways, yeah, I just recompiled, gave him a name, and then it just started working. A little bit weird, but yeah, just try recompile, you should be good. Hello, ally, so you can see that we're actually on Fred's team now, because we're a pirate, and he likes pirates, he's a zombie. But what I'm going to do now is if I go to the blueprint for our player, let's change my player. Let's say that our player is now a robot. As you remember, the zombies hate the robots, so now he should be really mean to me. Go to hell, yeah, he hates me. You suck. So there you go. There is our AI system. One last thing, I don't think the behavior tree was firing, which is a little bit weird. Oh no, there we go, simulating. Doesn't look like he's moving though, which is a problem. Okay, that was dumb of me. All I forgot to do, I made that function called setPlayerKey, which sets the player in the blackboard, but I never even called it. And to do that, all you need to do is just say controller setPlayerKey to the player. That's all you need to do. That's it. I'm dumb. I forgot that. Too many arguments. What? There is not too many arguments. What are you doing? I don't know. Let's just try and build it anyway. I think it might just be a stupid Visual Studio error. Yep, as suspected, that was just Visual Studio complaining for no reason. So now, our zombie should follow us. There you go. He's now following us. He's been set up to follow us, then wait 3 seconds, and so on. But there you go. You are welcome to go ahead and create a user interface that will let the player choose their faction. All I did to do that was make a HUD with a few buttons. And you remember we made that function called setPlayerFaction or whatever it was. You can just call that from your HUD and set the player's faction that way if you wish to let the player choose their own faction. But that's basically it. There's the faction system. You could implement any custom behavior you want. So in this example, I've just got the AI saying stuff to the character, but you could have different things, like the AI could start attacking the character or doing something else. So, but yeah, there you guys go. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you over at the next video.